battle at the Somme is remembered by many as a failure, a dark symbol of the First World War's staggering human cost. By the end of the offensive, an estimated 420,000 British soldiers, 200,000 French soldiers, and 450,000 German soldiers were either killed or wounded. One offensive, 5 long months of fighting that left a trail of devastation unlike anything the world had ever witnessed. It was described by British Prime Minister David Lloyd George as the most gigantic, tenacious, grim, futile, and bloody fight ever waged in the history of war. For generations, the Somme has stood as a lesson in military arrogance and miscalculation, a brutal indictment of leadership that seemed unprepared for the reality of modern industrial warfare. To many, it became the defining image of the futility of the First World War. But was the Battle of the Somme truly a failure? Or is there more to the story? By the end of 1915, the Great War had come to an impasse. Trench warfare had created a muddy stalemate, and both sides in the conflict needed to move the battle forward. To accomplish this, the Allied forces met at the Chantilly Conference in December 1915 and agreed on a strategy they named the Big Push. In this new strategy, the Italian army fought Austria-Hungary on the mountainous Isonzo front, while the Russian army launched the massive Brusilov offensive. Both battles were supposed to support the main Anglo-Franco offensive at the River Somme, which was to be led by the French. The Somme was not chosen at random. It was a strategic trench area strongly defended by the Germans. To break the German defense along the Somme was to gain a key sector along the Western Front. The date set for the battle was July 1st, 1916. However, the Germans acted first, catching the Allies off guard. In February, they launched a massive assault on the fortress city of Verdun. This was a direct attempt to break France's will to fight and possibly take them out of the war. To defend their position in Verdun, the French sent a large portion of their army to Verdun. This weakened the numbers they had to supply to the summer offensive at the River Somme. As a result, the British Expeditionary Force agreed to take the lead in a major offensive along the River Somme in northern France. In addition to breaking the stagnant trench warfare, the battle at the Somme was now also seen as the key to relieving pressure on the French at Verdun. For many British soldiers, this would be their first large-scale action. Britain's once small professional army had been replaced by newly trained volunteers, eager but largely inexperienced. Command of the operation was in the hands of General Sir Douglas Haig. Haig's military career included work done with the War Office, and in December of 1915, he was given the position of Commander-in-Chief of the British Expeditionary Force. Haig believed that a devastating bombardment would shatter German defenses and clear the path for infantry to advance. He was confident. His plan was simple. A week before the official offensive, artillery would be fired toward the German lines. The objective was to destroy the deep German dugouts, cut through the thick belts of barbed wire, and crush enemy morale. The infantry would come up behind the bombardment, then attack the Germans and overwhelm them. British soldiers were assured that very little resistance would remain once the bombardment lifted. But the British commanders had overestimated their abilities and underestimated the German defenses. Unlike the British soldiers, most of the German soldiers were experienced combat fighters. The Germans had 3 lines of defense supported by thick barbed wire and dugouts as deep as 10 feet. Additionally, they had telephone lines for communication. Intercepted British messages warned the Germans about the planned attack. During the week-long bombardment, thousands of artillery rounds were fired at the Germans. They failed to have the desired impact. British firepower, while deadly on land, had little effect against dugouts and wire fences. In many places, the German defense lines were damaged but not destroyed. On July 1st at 7:30 a.m., the battle at the Somme was set to begin, but one of the 19 mines placed along German strong points detonated 10 minutes before the designated time. This warned the Germans of the impending attack. Nevertheless, by 7:30 a.m., the British attack went ahead. What followed was the bloodiest day in British military history. By nightfall, nearly 60,000 British troops had either been killed or wounded. The Germans suffered 12,000 casualties and the French 7,000. It was not what the British had anticipated. The day was not a complete failure. The French 6th Army managed to take their objective positions, including Montauban and Mametz, and were able to push the German line back. They also captured around 4,000 German soldiers. The British, on the other hand, suffered many losses. The courage of the soldiers who advanced under relentless fire was extraordinary, but bravery could not overcome flawed assumptions, poor reconnaissance, and the brutal efficiency of German machine guns. Despite the catastrophic losses, the battle did not end that day. The Somme dragged on through heat, rain, and deepening mud. The battle evolved slowly from tragedy into education. In September, new weapons appeared on the battlefield. The tank, still primitive and unreliable, offered a glimpse of future warfare. Bit by bit, the Allies advanced. By November, Haig finally called the offensive to a halt. After 5 months and around 12 major battles, the ground gained by the Allied forces amounted to just 10 miles. The scale of sacrifice seemed immeasurable compared to the progress made. With such devastating losses, many labeled the Somme a disaster. Yet when we examine its strategic consequences, a different picture emerges. Firstly, the offensive achieved its most urgent purpose. It relieved the French at Verdun. German commanders were forced to divert men and firepower away from their assault, preventing France from being pushed out of the war. Secondly, the Somme forced a transformation within the British Army, from poorly coordinated volunteer formations to a more effective, more professional fighting force. Commanders learned, painfully, how to conduct large-scale warfare. Better use of artillery coordination and improved communication between units emerged. These lessons would shape Allied strategy for the remainder of the war, and eventually contribute to victory in 1918. The cost of the Somme can never be minimized. Families across Britain, France, and Germany carried scars that would last for generations. The numbers alone suggest a tragedy without redeeming purpose. The tragedy of the Somme battle was that the best soldiers, the stoutest-hearted men, were lost. Their numbers were replaceable. Their spiritual worth never could be, said an unidentified German soldier. The Somme stands as both a horrific symbol of human loss and a milestone on the road to Allied success. It was a battlefield where courage met catastrophe, where an army learned the realities of a new kind of war and where the course of the First World War quietly began to turn. So the question must be asked again: was the Battle of the Somme a failure? Or was it a grim, necessary step toward eventual victory? The truth, perhaps, lies somewhere in between, etched forever into the fields of the Somme.